Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of the Linda Ogweno Political Show. Indeed, if you want to run for a political seat in Kenya, it is true that you will need a team to help you win that campaign. And so stay tuned in because that is what we're going to look at in this particular episode. You know that in the Linda Ogweno Political Show, we train aspirants about politics and political processes in Kenya, hoping to bring better governance in Kenya. I want to appreciate Women United for Our Future for the role and support that they have given us towards the production of this particular show. And so before we go into the details of who can you have as a member of your campaign team, allow me to make a disclaimer. The people who will be in your campaign team largely depends on the budget that you have. And so you could be having a big budget, that means you can accommodate more people. You could also be having a lean budget, that means you may not be able to afford having so many people. But you want to know all this information as a candidate, you want to prepare. In the event that your budget is lean and you may not be able to have one or two people, how are you going to mitigate this risk? I would suggest that you may consider merging some roles together, and for those that you are able to do by yourself, start early, prepare yourself, and you will be able to handle it. So the first person you need to have in your campaign team is your campaign manager. So your campaign manager, think of as a CEO of a company. This is the person who's going to look at and be responsible for every other thing. So you want to be very, very key and very keen when you're hiring this particular person. The other person you need to have is a communications director. Communications director is going to be in charge of more or less just every messaging that needs to go out. That starts from you as a candidate. What is your message as a candidate? What is going out? Even for your IEC material, be it the posters, be it the flyers, this is the person who is going to be in charge of all that. If you have speeches that are going to go out, maybe you need to, you have a press interview and there are speeches going out, or you've been invited to an event and you need to speak, this is the person who will be in charge of that. The other person you want to think about is your digital and social media manager. I mean manager because they'll be in charge of the entire team. You could also be working hand in hand with bloggers, and bloggers are definitely the other set of people that you need to have in your campaign team. So the manager is going to be in charge of all of them. And also this is the person who will look at, have you responded to the different comments that are coming through the different social media sites, to check the passwords, how are they managed, is everything okay in that particular department. You want to have a field coordinator. Definitely this is the person who's working with the different groups in the ground. For example, you could be vying for a constituency level, and within that constituency there are the different wards. So you have the grassroots mobilizers in the different wards and in the small villages. All these people have to answer to one person. So this is the person who's going to be in charge of the field coordination. You also want to have a finance manager. Finance manager is the person who's going to look at how is money spent. And it could be, you could even have more than one person in a small committee, but there has to be one person who is responsible for that entire committee. How is money spent? How is money generated? This person has to look at the requirements of IEBC. There is the Election Campaign Act that was set out by IEBC. This is the person who has to see into it that your campaign is adhering to the requirements of IEBC. Hand in hand, this person can double up also as a funding manager, or you could also have a funding manager. Funding manager is responsible for looking for money. How is money coming in? They can look for donors, they can look for in-kind support, and just people who are able to support your campaign in one way or the other. So you can segregate and give it to a different person, or you can merge it. The other person you want to consider having in your campaign is a legal advisor. Yes, this person is going to see into it that your campaign is abiding by the laws of Kenya and you're not getting yourself in trouble. Again, there could be a petition against you as a candidate. This is the person who's going to handle that. Or you may need to sue, yourself. So this is the person who's going to handle that. Again, you may want to have a political strategist. There are different strategies in winning a political campaign. So you may want to have somebody who's in charge of, let's try this strategy, let's try that strategy. Again, you have people within the campaign team who will work with the bigger team. One of the persons you may want to consider having is a spiritual leader. A spiritual leader will just be in charge of, maybe praying for the entire team and just putting you guys in the hands of God and just covering you spiritually. Allow me to say that in elections, not everybody has the same altar. And continue watching this episode, because we'll be able to continue digesting and just going into these topics to help you in your candidature. So as I was saying, not every candidate, has the same altar. There are people who go through to different altars, and they could be your opponent. So you want to cover yourself spiritually if you're on the campaign trail. But yeah, that aside, you will find yourself in the campaign trail, and somebody will come and tell you, "Oh, I want to invite you to come for prayers at such and such a place." And when you find maybe more details about it, you could find it is a place that you're not very comfortable. And so if you don't have spiritual covering, you may find yourself in places that are not very comfortable. So have a spiritual leader. The other person you need to have is somebody in charge of security. Yes, you have to know your security as a person, the security of your campaign team, your equipment. And so there has to be somebody in charge of that. When you're going to a venue, they go beforehand, they check the entrance, the exit. We will talk about security in depth, but you want to have somebody in charge of the entire security team. And they could be the same person, but you can also consider having a logistics coordinator. This person sees into it that events are running smoothly. Maybe if you're going to another town, another center, they go ahead and see into it that the venues have been booked, and anything that needs to be hired, maybe the sound system, all those are in charge. And when you come with your team, how is your team going to be taken care of? The other person you want to have in your team is a data analyst. Yes, you want to look at data, the data of that area, before you vie for that particular seat. What are the numbers talking about? In the last election, how did it work? Who are the voters who are registered in that place? Can you segregate this data further into young people, old people, women, all that? You need somebody to be able to do that, and be able to give you this. And also identify voters. Where are your voters? You could be, let's say, in Ward X, and some people who are voting in Ward X stay in Ward Y, which is maybe a neighboring ward. You want to go to Ward Y and find out some of the voters of Ward X who are in Y, who are still voting here. And because boundaries have been separated before, these are some of the things that have ended up affecting and leading to people staying in another ward, yet they are voting in the other ward. You want to have somebody in charge of creative director or a designer. You will have your IEC material, your posters, your banners, your e-posters, all those, they have to be designed by somebody. So you may want to consider having somebody who is going to be in charge of just all that. And posters are things that keep running. They're alive. Today you have a poster about this event. Tomorrow you have another poster about the other event. So you may want to just have somebody you've hired that specifically that's what they do. The other thing, a person you may consider having is somebody in charge of media. They go and see to it that you have TV interviews, radio interviews. They book you because these are platforms that are going to work towards your favor. They will give you audience, they will give you marketing. So they may plan and look for this opportunity on your behalf. You want to have somebody in charge of volunteers, a volunteer coordinator. You will have people volunteering for your campaign, and just don't onboard anybody just because they're volunteering. Some could be sent by your opponent, some could be there for reasons that are not for your advantage. And so as somebody who is in charge of vetting that process, and just somebody they can answer to, is something you may want to consider. You want to have somebody in charge of agents. Yes, on the day of elections, you will have agents. Yes. So who is going to be in charge of them? Who's going to recruit them? Who's going to see to it that their welfare is sorted? You want to have someone in relation to that. I had mentioned bloggers. Definitely, bloggers are the online warriors of our time. So you need to have them. You may consider having a PR officer. This is the person who's going to take care of your PR, your banters. If there's propaganda against you, how do you counter it? This is the person who is in charge of that. The other vital person you may consider having in your campaign is definitely the photographer or a videographer. You want the things that you're doing on the ground to be captured and to be put on social media. So you may consider having a photographer, and this photographer, after doing this, they'll be sending this information and sharing it with the bloggers. So definitely you may consider that. Policy advisor. These people just guide you on the policies that are already there. There's the health sector, the education sector, they go through and comb and tell you this is the policy that is already existing there. So perhaps if you're coming up with your manifesto, how then can you merge or align with the current policies, and of course based on the Constitution of Kenya. You may have in your campaign team the youth caucus, the women caucus, the all people caucus. Definitely all these people must answer to somebody. So if you have like a youth caucus, there has to be their leader, the women caucus, and like that. Again, you want somebody in charge of diaspora. You want to look at the diaspora people. Do not forget or assume them. So for example, diaspora people, they do come and vote. Again, they may also help in funding your campaign. So don't assume them completely. Another person you may want to consider is a protocol officer. In case you have events and you're inviting other leaders, there's always protocol. You may want to consider that. You want to consider having a researcher. They may also work hand in hand with the data analyst. A researcher is just going to look at, what is the research that has been there. Also, don't forget to research about your opponent. And yes, in the other episode, we mentioned that you should know more than their name. So, who is your opponent? What do they stand for? All that information. You want to be having somebody you can be sending, even to your opponent's functions, to just find out more information and come and report back to you. The other person you may want to have is an image consultant. How are you going to look? What is the clothes? What is the hairstyle that people are going to know you with? How are you going to dress if you're going to different functions? Maybe you're going to a women's function, or you're visiting maybe the Muslim community, or you're visiting a particular church denomination and they have the outfit that they are wearing, and maybe there's a way that church you're supposed to behave. These are the people who should be this is the person who should be doing that on your behalf. You can consider having a nutritionist or a physical instructor. Campaigns, you will barely have time to eat, or you may not even have the appetite to eat, but that you have to consume food. So somebody may have to look at that. If your budget can allow it, you may consider, and maybe just some slight workout so that your physical body can be able to withstand the pressure that comes with the election. You may want to have somebody in charge of training. As I've said, you'll have agents, you'll have this team. Somebody has to train them so that when they're going out even to the grassroots to look for your votes, they are speaking your language. You want to train people in your campaign team. And of course, agents for the last day of polling, you have to train them. So somebody can be in charge of training. You want to have somebody in charge of tallying the results. I've said data clerk. So on that particular day when the results are streaming in, so you may want to have people who are just collecting this on your behalf. Don't rely 100% on the one of IEBC and are also just doing the tallying. The other person you may consider having, if your budget allows, is a personal assistant. A personal assistant is just going to manage your schedule, pick your phone calls. You may not be able to handle that, so they'll do that on your behalf. Again, they may remind you of meetings that probably you have forgotten, and that is very important. You can consider also having drivers, because you may be having a vehicle or vehicles, so that means you will be having a driver or drivers. Those are part of your campaign team. Please allow me to say that you need to consider having a counselor or a psychiatrist. Campaigns are very physically exhausting. It is mentally and emotionally draining too. So kindly take time to make sure that there is somebody who's going to take care of your mental health. If your budget can allow, get a professional, but if not, maybe get a spouse or a friend or just somebody you're able to trust within this space. And don't assume you will be okay. Please plan for that particular person. In closing, what I'd want to say is it is very important, the people you have in your campaign team. So be very, very intentional about hiring these people. Don't just go for loyalty or maybe familiarization in terms of family members. Some people may just hire somebody maybe because it's a family member. Try and look beyond that or just loyalty. Also try and have professionalism so that you have a combination of all these things regardless of the budget that you have. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, plan smart, build wisely, and start early. That will give you room for you to be able to make sure that all the aspects of your campaign has been handled. And as I finish, I'd want to finish with the words of Proverbs chapter 15 verses 22 that says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. So build your team, seek wise counsel, and let God guide you in every step. If you have liked the content of this particular episode, I want to invite you to like, to subscribe, and to share with other aspirants. I also want to invite you to watch the next episode as well, because this is the Linda Ogweno Political Show, where we train you about politics and political processes in Kenya. Thank you, and bye-bye.